here today to speak to us about her experience, what she's been doing, and kind of just share a bit of knowledge with you guys. So if everyone get a massive round of applause and welcome Selena today.
As you said, my name is Selena McDonald. I'm here to talk to you about scents and, most importantly, how scents interact with the marketing world. I'll tell you a bit about me in a moment, but I wanted to first start off by saying, so we all wear perfumes, or the majority of us wear perfumes, or we have candles, or we have a diffuser. It's used throughout our daily life. Something that I really experienced when I started to explore the scent world is the fact that it's actually very secretive. It's very well established. You can trace its roots back to France. I don't know if anybody goes to the south of France. So Grasse, which is part of Nice, is actually the home of fragrance. So the largest fragrance houses like Christian Dior, Chanel, and so on, they all started off there, and they've all stayed there. Now, a bit about me. I'm actually non-traditional. I'm a banker by trade, so I started off as a New York attorney. I then moved back to the UK and went to work as a banker, so I invest money for wealthy people. And something that really struck me is one of my first weeks of working in New York, so this was some time ago. I'm older than I look, and or maybe not. And so one of my bosses called me into a meeting room, and she sat me down and she said, Selena, when you're in the corporate environment, something that you really need to consider is how you smell. And I was like, okay. And she was like, have you never thought about your personal brand? You are selling yourself. And how you smell and how much you smell is something that people take into consideration. So I was like, okay, is she telling me that I smell bad? Is she telling me that I smell good, but I just have too much on? I was just really confused. So that weekend, I took myself to Brooklyn, and I don't know if you know, but Brooklyn's the home of a lot of the new cool fragrances. And I went to a boutique and I spent an hour there really questioning what this fragrance is meant to look like. What is this professional fragrance? And after an hour, whilst I walked out with 3 different perfumes, I just had no idea about the perfume world. I was just completely confused. So that started my journey into exploring perfumes and scents, traveling around the world, learning how to make perfumes, learning how to make candles, meeting some of the top perfumers in the world. And it's through that journey that I've actually seen how perfume has now, over the years, started to interact with non-fragrance related brands. So just some examples. Okay, so if we actually start with Hyatt Place, I've actually stayed at their hotels. There's 300 of them across the US. And when you walk in, you can smell a scent of white flowers, you can smell blueberries, and you think it's by accident, but actually it's on purpose. So they put together this massive campaign. It was a scent logo campaign, and they wanted people who actually were staying in their hotel to feel as though there was a lifestyle attached to it. Of course, that makes sense. They took it a step further. They actually sell candles, and they sell diffusers and even cologne in their gift shops, so that you, as the person staying in the hotel, can have a bit of their hotel back at your home as well. So they're taking this very seriously, and on a monthly basis, they actually surveyed the people staying in their hotels, a number of them, to see if they were exposed to the scent and to ask how they felt about it. So this is just one example of how they've created this scent logo as a way to enhance their brand. Non-hospitality related brand is Abercrombie and Fitch. Sorry. I've never ever in my life bought anything from this shop. I just haven't. I mean, I'm 5'1", it's just not a thing for me. So the thing is though, I could tell you what their shop smells like. So I think we've all been there. When we've walked past the shop, I think there's one on Regent Street, and you're just hit by this quite literally fierce fragrance. And the fragrance is actually called Fierce, by the way. And what they do is they pump it through all the air conditioning. They actually spray it on the clothes. They have those beautiful models, because it's full of models, half-dress models as well. They have them wear it. And because of that, it's actually, that fragrance is one of the #1 selling fragrances in the US and in Europe. So what happens is we smell something, it goes into our nasal cavity, and it hits the olfactory bulb. And then that bulb is connected to the limbic system, and it's the limbic system which actually has all of your memories. So think of it as a key. You smell smell a rose, that's a key. You smell mint, that's a key. It goes into your nose, and you've got all these doors stored in the limbic system. That key fits into that door, and it actually unlocks it, and it unlocks all the memories. We are able to remember 10,000 different scents. So, on the day-to-day, like when you get on the tube, this is a big point of annoyance for me, and somebody really early in the morning has sprayed a lot of perfumes. You're sat there thinking, oh my God, what is that? Is it sandalwood? Is it cedarwood? Is it rose? And so on. It's because I have all these memories of these different scents stared up here, and it brings back all different experiences that I've had. In the scent world, there's natural scents and there's synthetic scents. So your natural scents will be animal-based or plant-based, and then you'll have your synthetic scents, and they're actually trying to replicate the animal-based or the plant-based, and that's for a number of reasons. For example, and you'll be able to smell this later, cedarwood's endangered. I have some here. Sorry, smuggled in from Marrakesh. But because it's endangered, fragrance companies are now making synthetics. So what they do is they look for other woods that have some of the same elements as cedarwood, and they actually combine it, and then they call it cedarwood the synthetic. And that's why when you buy a perfume, the more you spend on a perfume, typically speaking, the more natural the elements are. IKEA for me has a really, really strong brand identity. When I think Scandinavia, I think wood, I think modern, I think items that are meant to be cheap but look more expensive. And so if I were advising IKEA on their scent brand, it would be something like cedarwood. And again, I wouldn't just use the one note, because cedarwood is actually a base note. I would use a combination of notes. So when you think of antique furniture, for me from the Orient perhaps, you think of these really, really highly fragranced woods. And so if I wanted to portray a really high quality antique-esque flat pack, then potentially I would have cedarwood being pumped through my air conditioning unit, because it will encourage people, I would hope, to buy. When it comes to branding and marketing, we seem to be pushing for the visual, always for the visual. But in fact, if you were to put 100 cards in front of somebody and take them away and ask them to recall them, they could only recall 50 of those. But if you put 100 scents in front of somebody and they smelt them, take them away, they could recall 65% of those. So 65 of those scents they'll be able to. So the question is, why are brands not working harder to create a scent brand as well as visual branding tools? We have these large perfume houses that are really quite bespoke and expensive, but we see companies like Victoria's Secret creating their own brands. We see Ferrari, Lamborghini, they all have their own fragrances, so it is scalable. And the way that people get around that is potentially using synthetics, so you're going to create a perfume that's not as high class, or they actually own their own naturals. So Chanel owns a number of rose fields. Guerlain own fields full of cedar. So actually by owning the natural product, it makes it cheaper to then turn it into the oil and then add it into the perfume. The cedarwood is quite a strong smell, that base note. But actually, lemon, and there's surveys on this, lemon is a scent that quite a lot of people like. So in creating your scent logo, your scent identity, you'd actually do a lot of research around what are favoured by the majority or your client base, and actually make a scent that actually matches that. Where there is scented things around, so when you walk into offices and there's scent and so on, it's not so much that each individual scent is jarring to somebody, it's the amount that's used. So, and that's, I don't know if you disagree, but that's the issue that I have. I don't mind a bit of perfume, but if you're sitting next to me in the tube and you've emptied a bottle, that's going to be an issue for me. Just saying. Well, you can trademark a fragrance. You can't trademark the individual notes that go into a scent, but you can trademark a fragrance. But you'll find that when Chanel launches a perfume, the issue that they have, a lower perfume house will then try and replicate that. So it's very hard to do. Very, very hard to do. If we go back to the example of Hyatt Place, What they actually do is they run surveys with people who've stayed with them. They send in mystery smellers to smell to see whether they experience the scent whilst they're in their hotels. They also have their range, which they sell, so they kind of take from that what's the popularity of our scent, how much of this is being sold. And they just ask the question, did you feel good in our hotel? What did you like about our hotel? Like, did you notice anything to do with scent in our hotel? And the feedback's very good, and that's why they started this, I think it was in 2007, and they've built their team over the years, and it's now, they're looking to implement it into different areas of the Hyatt world. I'm one of those people who's like, okay, what should I wear during the day? What should I wear during the night? At the moment, I'm wearing Val d'Afrique, and this guy is amazing. He's Swedish. He was studying art in Canada. He gave it up, and he set up his own perfume house. He didn't have any education in perfume, and he's put together these really crisp, modern fragrances. And the one that I'm wearing, sorry, it's called Byredo, the perfume house, but the one I'm wearing is Val d'Afrique. And it's quite oody, it's quite musky, it's quite woody. It's something that a man can wear as well. But I guess, given that I spend the day talking about investments and I'm surrounded by men, I opt for a scent that's going to stand out amongst them. But it's also subtle enough that nobody's going to choke, because I mean, that's not a good situation. So yeah, Val d'Afrique. If you're ever looking for, like I said before, you're looking for a new fragrance, and as, I don't know, it seems like a very formulaic thing to do, but have a look at the fragrance wheel. And this is a very short version of it, but it goes into more detail. And if you actually look on fragrance websites now they're listing the different components within their fragrances, whereas a year ago you wouldn't have seen that. They wanted to keep the secret. They didn't want people to know what they were doing, and especially if it was something very innovative, but today you can.